Hello and welcome. Is there a correlation between age and competence and the quality of leadership? Now, recently, since the NPP's Nana Addo, who will be 70, in a few days' time, announced his intention to contest flag bearership, there has been a debate about whether or not he's too old to contest. Is this a non-starter? Experience definitely comes with age and years of practice. How about health? Pope Benedict XVI became the first pope to resign in 700 years on the grounds of age and infirmity. The Pope told the cardinals that in order to govern, both strength of mind and body are necessary. So where should we really focus our attention when it comes to choosing our leaders? Now, joining me later in studio will be Dr. Theophilus Richardson, a political scientist and development economist. He will be joining me later. And then on the phone is Dr. Arthur Kennedy, author of Chasing the Elephant into the Bush, to come and join us so we jojo this debate. My name is Nana Addo and this is PM Express. Hello, and the issue on the table today is age, competence, and leadership. Should it really matter? Should there be any correlation? I don't know, and keep posting your comments on Facebook, and I'll read them. Please don't politicize it too much, otherwise I won't be able to read it anyway. Just look at it, on an even playing field, and see if indeed it matters or if it doesn't matter. Every idea on the table is very important. But joining me on the phone now is Dr. Arthur Kennedy, the author of Chasing the Elephant into the Bush. Hello, sir.
Good evening, and good evening to your listeners.
Good evening, Dr. Kennedy. Thanks. No, it should be afternoon in the U.S. by now. I think we're about 5 hours ahead of you, aren't we?
That is correct.
Oh, very good. So we haven't woken you up from your sleep. But we are talking about age, competence, and leadership. The argument is that, well, if you are old, you're more experienced. And then the other school of thought is saying that if you're old, you are fragile and your health may not be in place. And regards to running a country is concerned, stand aside and let the young ones run it. What's your take? What's your position on this?
Well, my position is that both sides are wrong. Actually, looking at it historically, there are instances where there have been exceptional young leaders, and there are also instances where there have been exceptional old leaders. And of course, both ages have produced very bad leaders too. I think, though, that it is a very important issue in the context of our 2016 election for two reasons. First, we had a president die in office just before our last election. There were a lot of discussion about whether he was well or not well and all that kind of thing. And the second thing which most Ghanaians didn't focus on was the resignation of the Pope, which was the first papal resignation in 700 years. And he felt that he needed what he called vigor in body and mind in order to carry on his ministry. And he felt that these things were failing him, and therefore he had to step aside. I mean, those are very important parameters against which we can chart our journey. I believe that historically, to go back to analogies of history, if, for example, you look at Conrad Adenauer, who was German Chancellor late into his late 80s, very exceptional Chancellor. And the Xiaoping, who took over China in 1978, very exceptional leader, Ronald Reagan, oldest elected president of the United States, who was very good. The old people have made their case, but so have the young ones. You look at William Pitt the Younger, Prime Minister at 24, John Kennedy, President at 43, Kwame Nkrumah, Prime Minister at 47. They were all very exceptional leaders. So I think really we can put the issue aside. I think it boils down to what I call fitness in terms of health and mind, electability, and then competence.
The other issue is that if you look at the Western world, the average age of the Western world leaders are about 50.1, and apparently if you look within Africa, it's about probably 70, and therefore there's about 25, 26-year gap, and it's in correlation in development that the Western world are leading us about 26 years when it comes to development, and maybe it's because of the age difference.
Well, Nana, sorry, they're actually leading us by a bigger margin, but it has nothing to do with age. You know, if Mitt Romney had been elected, he would have been fairly older than Obama. Ronald Reagan was elected at 69. He took office when he was 69, and he was a very vigorous and capable leader. So my point is that, and Addo, like I've already told, he was a chancellor into his 80s, one of the best presidents in history. William Gladstone was prime minister into his 80s. So it is not about the age, it is the competence. I think that it is a fallacy to look at the average ages and correlate that with development. There is no evidence that effectively correlates the age of development.
Then my next question to you would be our style of campaigning, where you literally need to trek up and down the country. Some of the roads are bad, and would you need to be a bit younger, fit and well to run that sort of rigorous campaign? I'm sure you've been on the campaign trail.
Yeah, it is true. You go to places like Bumpu, the Yo-Yo, Chicago, Cape Town, and Nkwanta. The roads are pretty bad, but I think that we are confusing fitness with age. There are very old people who are very fit, and there are young people who are not fit or are unwell. I think that we should require that all our candidates be fit for the rigors of campaigning and governance. But we should not presume, because that is a form of discrimination that ain't necessary in line of being. And this is not soccer. This is an intellectual exercise. As I say in my piece, I would take the field any day to storm for a leader who is mature in years, sure in his judgment, balanced in his temperament, unafraid to take on corruption, the voice of the poor, one who is respected in international circles, even if he is 90. The problem is not the age, it is whether the person can do what we require them to do.
Before I let you go, Dr. Kennedy, would you say that maybe with Africans, because of our culture and our social makeup, we need an elderly person to lead? Because of who we are, our respect and our culture, it is suitable for an older person to lead.
Well, it is neither here nor there. Nkrumah was very young. He was a very successful leader. So while our culture respects age, it is also our culture who says in Akan, which you translate, we're elders before we instruct the chief. So people distinguish between the respect that we must have for age as well as the respect that we must have for leadership. And we should not confuse the two. There are very young leaders who are gifted, and there are very old leaders who are very good. As somebody said in the last few days, I would prefer an old man who knows what he's doing to a young man who doesn't know what he's doing. So I think we should focus on the competence.
Dr. Kennedy, thank you very much for responding to the call.
You're welcome. Good evening.
Okay, good evening. And now let me welcome to the studio Dr. Theophilus Richardson. Doctor, you're welcome.
Thank you.
Again. We're looking forward to this discussion.
Yes.
Now, the issue on the table is age, competence, and leadership. But I want to start with you with where I finished off with Dr. Kennedy, that the argument is that, oh, in the Western world, the leaders are younger and everything. I'm just saying that with our makeup, because we are who we are, do we need an elderly person to lead because of who we are? Do we definitely have to mimic that because Obama is 40, you have to find somebody who's also 40? Or, just, coming to think about it, they might respect him more, they might obey him more. Do we need an elderly person to lead?
Yes and no.
Okay.
It's my answer to this question. But we have to find out why the elderly generation in Africa, seem to have always been in the front line of politics and not the young generation. And that has to do with the number of years democratic governance has been experimented in Africa. If you take the specific example of Ghana, experiences of Ghana, out of the 50, 70 years, we've had how many military rules? The PNDC, NDC, or the PNDC regime was in power for about 11 years. Nkrumah was in government for specifically 9 years. If we add from 1952, that was 15 years. Then we had a number of military regimes, although very short period. NLC about 3 years, Achampon 6 years, Akufu 2 more years or 3 years. Yes. So it was the PNDC regime that took, and the NDC that took most of the the period, post-independence period. And as a result of that, we could not have some experimentation or consolidation, if I may put it that way, with democratic governance of practices. And therefore, we could not have the opportunity to develop the institutions, through which we could nurture and groom our leaders. And so those who have been at the forefront of the struggle, not only for independence, but also against military, authoritarian, autocratic, dictatorships or whatever, have emerged, whenever the military regimes have been swept away as the natural leaders. And it hasn't to do only with our cultures. I mean, if you go back to Europe, the 1990s, what was the age group of the leadership of the Conservative Party? Okay, when even John Major took over from Margaret Thatcher, all right, Douglas Hurd, all those people, they were quite advanced in age. All right, what has happened is that those people moved on. When John Major lost power, they moved on with John Major, and a new generation emerged, Tony Blair and his people, including, even those in the Conservative Party. A new generation of politicians emerged in the Conservative Party. Okay. And that enabled, Tony Blair and his people. They lost power and they moved on, and we see 39-year-old or 43-year-old David Cameron came to power because the old generation moved on. They had institutions such as parliament, parliamentary democracy, to facilitate, encourage that kind of grooming and nurturing of leaders. We haven't had that, and it should be a matter of not so much of a concern, but we should accept it that if people like Akufo-Addo are emerging now, it is because of the leadership role they have played in the body politics of Ghana since, I would say, the late 1970s. Okay. So, no big deal. But fortunately, we have young men emerging. Akufo-Addo chose a very young man, quite a young man, about my age. Atamils did even better by bringing in his government very young men. The Akujetua Blackwells, Fifi Koites, they are very young men, and it is good for the society. One did the same. If you look at the age profile of those who served under the PNDs, Bukwakye worked for only 8 months. I think with the TUC after national service, and he went into the government at Torson's, Donates, and all. When they entered the government, they were in their late 30s or early 40s, you know, or late 20s. Jerry Rawlings himself was 32. So the pace had been set, except that, as I will emphasize again, we did not have the institutions to facilitate the nurturing and grooming of political leaders to take over from the old generation.
So why has age become such an issue? Is it only for political grounds, or are people genuinely concerned about the age issue?
I suppose it is mainly for political opportunism. All right? Because age shouldn't matter. When George Bush Sr. came to power, how old was he? You know, he was quite advanced in age. And even Reagan. All right? So it depends on the experience, the capabilities, and the competencies the person brings to bear on the government and his leadership. Nkrumah was 39, and with hindsight, Nkrumah would have told you that if I had come into power, I think much older than I did, you know, I wouldn't have done certain things. And so did Rawlings. Rawlings came to power at age first 29, 1979, and then 32. And if you spoke to Rawlings today, he would tell you that there are certain things I did that I wouldn't have done, you know, 10 years on, whatever. So there is something that goes with age, in particular, experience and wisdom. But we do have, as Reverend Asamoah put it, if I may, kind of quote him or paraphrase him, he said that we've got young men who are wise and old men who are wise. And we've got old men who are wise and
unwise,
and old men who are foolish. Okay? So you may have an old man who is damn foolish, all right? And you may have a young man who is damn foolish, and vice versa. It depends on the exposure in terms of politics. Exposure is extremely important. It's critically important, and the lessons of experience the person learns and how it informs the person's perspectives and outlook on politics, especially relating to the opponents or the opposition, you know, and how it informs his understanding of the problems facing the country, and how those insights and perspectives inform his solutions, you know, to those problems and for the way forward. This is the kind of things that we need to look at, you know, or look for in our candidates who put themselves out to, you know, ask for our votes.
In civil service or in most employments, at 65, you're told, thank you very much, you've done a good work, go home and rest. Maybe they say, okay, you know what, stay on for 2 years on contract basis, after that, go home and rest. I think all but lawyers who go on till their kingdom come, everybody should go and rest. Should there be a cut-off age to say, listen, chap, you're going to run the country, it's a huge task. Now you're 65, now you're 68 or you're 70, so take a bow or play a godfather role. Should there be that legislation?
I don't think that there should be any, constitutional device, you know, to limit the age, the maximum age. We do have the minimum. I think that is sufficient. We should develop this kind of tradition or norm or convention over time.
Let me repeat myself.
Yes.
You know, at 65, let's say you were the programs director for here. That's all you're doing, just the programs director.
I do understand.
At 65, they claim that, look, you're too old to just manage this program director, so go home.
Yes.
But the whole country, from the north to the south to the east to the west, aren't you a bit old and tired to do all that, so that the states should come up and say, listen, at that age, relax?
Aren't the members of the Senate in the United States old enough to carry on with their jobs, you know, Newt Gingrich and all those? But aren't the members of the House of Lords in the United Kingdom too old to perform in those, you know, capacities? I think there's something else more that goes with
but they have systems that work. So even if they sleep,
so
the system will work.
Yeah, what we do need is to develop the systems. And I think we have started, and I suppose that after some time, you know, there wouldn't be people of the age of, 50, 60, you know, fronting themselves as leaders. So I think the whole thing about age has to do with the candidature of or the intended candidature of Nana Addo. And that was very much played by his opponent, especially John Mahama, that he was youth and all that, you know. And I think the facts are out there for us to make judgments. He is youth, he is in power as president, not in the shadows of anybody. His performance is being evaluated. To whom can we give the doubt? We may as well give him the doubt at the end of the 4 years, but Nana Addo will be 72, as he has put it. We know of his record, both in the body policies of Ghana, in his party, in government, but we don't know of his record in government. So, on the balance of probabilities, who should we give the benefit of the doubt? Age should not be a factor now. What matters is the fitness of the individual. And since we have the presidential system, the presidency, it is the running mate, the capabilities of running mate that matters, and the capabilities of the running mate, you know, to actually front for the man during the elections and carry the message forward. In other words, to complement him, as it were, not only in some parts of the country, but all over the country, in terms of all the issues that may crop up, ethnicity or tribalism, the policies, the issues, whatever. And I think these are the real issues that we must satisfy. I suppose that for now, you know, if we got somebody who is well advanced in age, given his his intimations with our experiences over the years, it may play to the advantage, because we need somebody who can exert some kind of moderating influences, all right, over the firebrand, the hotheads, all right. And if you see the overture that was made by Nana Addo, I suppose very much, initiated or masterminded or orchestrated by Jake, following a meeting with Jerry Rawlings at some part last year, you know, which facilitated the meeting of. Nobody thought that the two of them would have made. I think that a considerable degree of rapprochement has been established between the two, and whatever fears that Rawlings may have entertained, as he put it, that I hope that you will not come to power and then imprison all my people, you know, may have been somewhat allayed. It is good that we see that as politicians we are opponents, and Parliament in the UK is a club, you know, and therefore we judge or we dialogue and pool our resources as a people, no matter where we stand, you know, to put the country forward. It should not be, politics in Ghana should not be heart only, heart cut off. If you are not with me, it means you are against me. That is balderdash. And I think that what Akufo-Addo did last year, as I did emphasize on at one media station, you know, was a good thing for the country. The host insisted that Akufo-Addo went to Rawlings in order to score political points. I think that was, to put it mildly, mischievous. You know, he should have seen what happened as even a plus for Jerry Rawlings, that the two of them could dialogue, you know, and then resolve whatever differences, at least start talking. So
you were saying maybe that was done through maturity. Through
maturity counts.
It's unfortunate that Nana Akufo-Addo becomes the subject matter because he's the elder one here.
Yes.
But I am looking at the country as a whole. Yeah. Where we are now, don't we need a president that will take risk? And maturity, people who are older normally will not take risks because they are more mature. And so, in order to put systems in place, don't we need some sharp guy who would, I don't know if sharp guy is the right word, but somebody who's maybe young and more abrasive to take more risks. As a nation, not an adult issue. You know, Ghana is sitting down and we are deciding who to go and lead.
Yes. And we are talking about risk and vulnerabilities.
Yeah. Okay.
And as I said with that, in addition to that, uncertainties. And we are talking about politics. Yeah. And decisions that directly or indirectly affect the daily lives of people. All right. So it doesn't to do with a young man or an old man. It has to do first with the fitness of the individual. If it's an old man, you know, his or her health status. Young men, 39, 40 are dying anyway. All right.
All too soon.
All too soon. So it has to do with the competencies, the exposure. You know, what has been the exposure, both academically, you know, professionally, and more so in Ghanaian body politics of that individual who we should vote for, you know, to take over the mantle of power. This is the critical point. And as a nation, we should allow the system to evolve so that at some point in time, a 55-year-old will see himself as automatically disqualified to enter into the foray of, you know, the political competition for election for leadership. There's something in leadership. Let me tell you this. If Jones Ofurata Powley had led a united front in 1979, I think the results of 1979 election results would have been different, certainly different. You know, at the same time, we looked.
Oh, but he couldn't have because of tribalism and everything.
Yeah, because of the division. Yes, and that wasn't the first time. And if we know what happened, most of us know what happened in the post 1945 years. No, the national struggle when UGCC was formed, and how Park Grant and James JB Dankwa, okay, and Akufo-Addo and William Ofurata and R.S. Blair and all those people, okay, held the society together in an orderly and decent fashion, you know, in the march towards independence. Our judgment would have been different. On every Friday, you ask, as my father told me, and even my landlord has told me several times, on every Friday, every Ghanaian civil servant or, you know, do I say, former sector employee wore a red, you know, tie. Okay. You know, and it was cool and placid. There was no agitation. Then burst onto the scene a young man who had imbibed some Marxism and socialism and read some works or been intimated with the what was that, the politics of Marcus Garvey and Du Bois and all that, and who thought that African people, all black people are the same, and then United Nations or West Africa could be created. You know, and he started all kind of agitation, following the All African People's Conference in the UK, Manchester, and all that. You know, and you saw the radicalism. Look, do you know what precipitated the march to the castle? You know, that it was engineered, actually orchestrated by Kwame Nkrumah. Previously, all petitions were sent directly to the British Parliament by the leaders of the political campaign. Park Grant, in fact, before him.
I mean, I think we are digressing a bit, but was that not the whole idea why we should agitate? Why should we send our petitions? Is that not why we were going to agitate? Weren't we fed up in asking the white man, can we go up, can we stand up, can we do this?
Through legal, constitutional, and legitimate means.
And you think they would have given it to you?
Mr. Saba did it with Kobna Esuma and Grasechi under the banner of the.
But they wouldn't have given it to you.
Excuse me.
They had free gold, they had free timber, and you were asking them, can we take it back?
No. What was that? Aboriginal Right Protection Society, and they could resist the lands bill and the forest bill. So we had our lands. They went to the House of Commons to debate, argue, and that the bill could not pass. Okay. The bond of 1844 was signed for 100 years, and on the 5th of March. 1944, the Gold Coast should have been granted, the Gold Coast colony should have been granted independence. So we knew what it was about. As it was in the case for Iceland, that Iceland should have attained independence in 1944, but for the war. So we had an orderly fashion. The point I'm trying to buttress is that when the country was in the hands of elderly people who were mature, experienced, you know, cool heads, Park Grant, JB Dankwa, Akufo-Addo, William Ofurata, R.S. Blair, and those people, you know, there was no trouble. We had peace.
I'm going to take a break. Well, I'm saying that when I like the orderly fashion of the old people, which comes back to my point to say that they were not taking risks, and that when the young guy came in and took the risk, he got his independence there and then.
It took
even though it took him what, 9 years?
No, 10 years. You know, self-government step by step. 1957.
Could we have gotten it in 10 years? I'm taking a break. Stay tuned. We're coming back.
We could have gotten it even earlier. But
well, I mean, the argument is still going on, right? But on a peaceful matter. But I just want to swiftly move on to age, competence, and change. Now, you know, if the leader was much younger, they take more risks, and they're not scared of change. But then if the leader was older, they want the status quo to remain, and don't we want somebody younger to be, you know, more diverse and change, and probably in the IT age to move on? What would you say to that?
Yeah, you mentioned competencies.
Yes.
And competence has to do with knowledge, okay, and experience and exposure, okay, and so it depends on who has all of these together. Yes, the young ones who, you know, have the the temperament. Let me put it that way. You know, to venture, they are more venturesome. You know, so they want to take risks. however risk is defined, the older age groups, tend to be more moderate, in the way they approach issues. And moderation, should be distinguished from conservatism.
But the world is moving at a really fast pace.
Yes, conservatism is resistance to age. Conservatism or traditionalism, the resistance to age. But we should have traditions that we should protect and preserve. And what we should not allow to stand in our way, change, is what? Resistance to change, traditionalism. And we may well argue that a lot more of the old folks will want to preserve the status quo. If a young man wants to take risks, but he hasn't got the knowledge, the broad exposure, to deal with the wide gamut or the plethora of problems, but want to take risks for risk's sake, it could plunge us into disaster and devastation. We should avoid that. So we need a blend of the two. That is why in Britain they have the House of Commons, where we have the young men who go and do yeah, and we have the House of Lords, who exert moderating influence, over their policy. For example, if we had maybe a second chamber, which in some way is a council of state,
council of elders.
Is it? We have members of council. Is it council of state?
Members of the council of state.
Yeah, the council of state. If they had looked at the bill that the Universities of Ghana's bill, which has been capitalized on by University of Ghana to charge of, the consequences may have been different. All right. If we had a very powerful second chamber, which was a majority decision in 1957, to have taken a hard look at the 1960 criminal code, that code may not have been passed. And similarly for the 1958 Preventive Detention Act, although the intentions were good, or as Barima admitted, but we saw the catastrophic effect or the malignant uses to which the law was applied. And Barima argued, because of his experience and exposure, against the criminal code.
That law was justified.
No, I mean the criminal code, for example. Barima argued against it. Well, justified, you may argue, under the circumstances. But Chatuchikata argued some time ago, I do remember, that it was not necessary, we didn't need it, and we could have done other, all we needed to do. So always we need a combination of the two. There are young men, as Reverend Asama put it, who are wise. There are young men who are foolish. There are old men who are wise. There are old men who are damn foolish. We need a blend of the wise young men and the wise old men. And if you're talking about competencies or capabilities, it has to do with knowledge, experience, and wisdom. And it is when wisdom is applied to knowledge that we get the best, we get success, which is what we haven't had over the years anyway.
The speed at which the world is moving and innovations that are coming, and you look at where we are as a nation, should we go back and sit down, and again I'm asking you, and cap the age as a nation, and cap the age and say, listen, this is the beginning and this is the end? Because I'm saying that even in working in a post office, there comes a point where they say go home. Should the nation sit down and cap the age?
The nation should not sit down and cap the age. If you go to the United States or Britain and many other developed countries, you will find out that there are many firms which do have individuals, men and women, who are well advanced in age, not occupying the positions of chief executives, but acting as chairman of boards, or acting in certain specialized consultancy positions within the company because of their years of experience. So we must not do that.
So that's what I want.
What I'm saying is that
the elderly ones who still want to be in politics should be in a bigger house, where they are thinking for us, but not in the forefront.
No, it will come naturally. What I do expect is that if I look, as the NDC have done, John Mahama is 55 years, and he was given the opportunity to serve in that capacity. Rawlings much younger before him. All right. So what I do expect is that if the NPP found somebody like me as a capable person, who may not even a good standing member of the party, all right, but who has the knowledge, exposure, and the competencies. They should adopt me and groom me and help me, to move on. And that is what is going to happen over the next few years. We didn't need somebody, indeed, like Kufuor, to even be the leader after that. Was that he came to power in 2000, after 2004, because, because of his exposure, his orientation, he looked to be backward, looking, conservatism. But within the NPP, it was possible to have gotten somebody of Kufuor's age who was also forward-looking. And age does not matter. It depends on the individual's exposure. Would you want to tell me that Jimmy Carter is conservative or traditionalist who will resist change? No, not at all. Okay, so we must allow the institutions to work, and how the institutions work, the institutions will filter the good ones who will be the younger ones from the old ones.
Let me just throw in some controversy just before we go. Our system right now is that we have to elect the most popular person, not necessarily the most intelligent, oldest, youngest, whatever it is, but we're going to elect the most popular person. Is it a dangerous system we are running?
It depends on how you define danger or
well, because most people will vote because we need him, not because this is the track record. The system
and
generally.
That has to do with the level of literacy stroke illiteracy. Okay, this is a predominantly illiterate society, and not only is it illiterate, but it's also a system which is ruled and driven by patronage. Okay, so because of patron-client relationships, we do not have the achievement of objective criteria which operate in modern political systems operating in this country. This is the danger, and we should ask ourselves, how do we fight against this? We have elections. I mean, since 1992, people have voted along the tribe, along the lines of tribe, and other considerations which have nothing to do with policies and the personnel, who are asking for political power. And it goes to the root of the incorporation of the state of Ghana. And it is a threat to the stability, not only of the democratic, the political experimentation or consolidation, but even to the stability or sustainability of the nation state called Ghana. Because if people should vote along ethnic lines, then we might as well, go back to our own tent, because after all, Ghana is an amalgamation of different tribes which lived on their own. The Gold Coast colony was separate, from the Ashanti Kingdom and the Northern Territories. So it was time we moved. Kwame Nkrumah tried to deal with that problem by invoking ideology, and so we had some kind of ideology operating up to a point. All the political parties which emerged in the 1950s, were either religious-based or tribal-based. There, Northern People's Party, the National Liberation Congress, the Togoland Congress Party, except in fact, even the United Gold Coast Convention was a Gold Coast party, but it could move into the Ashantis and Ashanti region and the Bronx and also.
I think I need to call you back so that we
it's look. It's unfortunate that I came a little late.
Yeah,
but we must look at the competencies. What do the party leaders stand for? Their track record against corruption. The main issues are going to be about corruption, injustice, and poverty. Okay, and what is the positions of these political party leaders who will merge in 2016 to ask for the mandate of the people? And that should be the deciding factor. And we should all take it upon ourselves, to work against the tribalism, the factionalism, the fractious nature, and I think the violence with which even the politics is conducted.
Well, thank you.
And also the mafia. That there's a mafia. There's a kind of mafia.
I will call you in one day, and then we'll talk about the mafia and the history of the political parties and how we're going to merge it all together. Age, competence, and leadership, and that's Dr. Theophilus Richardson, political scientist and development economist. As I always say, thank you very much, and tomorrow we'll be back to do it all over again.